Number one. Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Wednesday, February 24th. It's a beautiful day out there in Vancouver, nice and clear and sunny, so that's nice. It's always nice when there's sun in Vancouver in the winter because sometimes it gets a little wet and a little rainy and a little cloudy and sometimes a little snowy. If you're wondering about the shirt, good morning. If you're wondering about the shirt, it's Pink Shirt Day today, and so it's kind of a anti-bullying awareness or awareness of bullying. This shirt here was designed by or produced by the Urban Native Youth Association, which is a association for Indigenous youth here in Vancouver. So I got the shirt from them, so thank you. It's very beautiful. I think that's all I have to say. That's all I have to say. Okay, let's jump into where we were yesterday. So, we're talking about movies, and we said that movies, and I guess we can include television in this as well, movies and television have a lot of social power, right? Because we enjoy them, right? We watch them all the time. We have our favorite shows. Sometimes we watch our favorite shows and movies over and over again, which we do, right? Right? Do you watch your favorite movies over and over? I think, Nasser, you said with the romantic comedies, you've seen them a few times, right? Yeah, we all do it, right? And so we kind of absorb these messages. We kind of use some of the characters or some of the actors as sort of role models, particularly when we're young. And so these movies can actually have a pretty significant effect on how people act and think and feel and what they believe, right? They're not just silly made up stories, right? They actually have a lot of power. And so we should pay attention to the messages that these media are sending, right? Because, again, if they're that powerful and people are influenced by them, what are they telling us? What are they saying, right? And so we were talking, we talked about horror movies. We also talked about romantic comedies and some of the messages they send. And then we started talking about misogyny yesterday. So this is particularly I guess a form of sexism directed towards women, right? And particularly a contempt of or a hatred towards women. And so we said that this is pretty easy to see in media. It's easy to see in social media, sadly. And it's even possible to see it coming from women. So a lot of misogynist tweets and material actually come from women as well. And that seems odd, but again, it shows this sort of internalized oppression, right? So we all absorb these social messages and we all kind of act on them, even the minoritized group, right? Even groups that are not benefited from that social message will sometimes absorb it and act on it. Just like the blue-eyed kids from Jane Elliott's class, right? They absorbed those social messages and then they kind of acted them out, even though those messages weren't in their best interest to believe, right? It wasn't in their best interest to believe that they weren't as smart, but they kind of wound up doing it, right? Especially when they got that message from a powerful agent of socialization, right? From the teacher. When you're little, the teacher's like God, right? They're all powerful. Good morning. Just like your parents, right? When you're a little kid, your parents are like all powerful. And when your parents say something, it's like, oh my gosh, right? Now, of course, you're like, yeah, whatever, mom and dad, right? But when you're young, they're much more powerful agents of socialization. And so, again, misogyny can kind of manifest in a bunch of different ways. We were watching a video essay the other day on the Big Bang Theory, and we said that there was actually a lot of misogyny in that show, but it was kind of laughed off, right? It was kind of, it didn't sort of trigger any alarms or, any tripwires in people's mind as like, oh, that's sexist or that's misogynist, right? And in part, I think there's a lack of education around misogyny and sexism in society, but also the show is framing this in a very clever and particular way, right? Lots of the people who are guilty of sexism and misogyny in this show are people who are not very threatening, right? And so we have kind of, I think in many societies, we have the idea of men as, the ideal of masculinity is sort of tough and strong and somewhat aggressive, and the pursuer, right? The guy who goes after women, right? Who chases women and who is successful with them. The alpha male, right? That's kind of that's one of our ideas about what men are like, sort of thing. And these guys are not that, right? They're not tough, they're not strong, they're not confident, they're nerdy. And so they get to sort of get away with their sexism because they don't seem like a threat, right? If you replace these guys with 5 hunky looking, muscly guys who were not nerdy in any way, well, the show would obviously fall apart because it doesn't work that way, but those lines, their lines coming out of the mouth of big, strong alpha male types would land totally different, right? You would think, wow, these guys are a bunch of, I'm not going to say it starts with an A, right? These guys are a bunch of jerks, right? But again, if it comes from these guys who are kind of silly and wimpy and, nerdy, it lands different and people laugh at it. But the messages are just as damaging, right? They're just as damaging because people absorb these social messages, men and women alike, right? And again, there's a lot of contempt for women. There's a lot of belittling of women in this show. We talked about Harrison Ford, and again, this was my kind of peace offering to those who I may have ruined romantic comedies for, because he was kind of a hero of my childhood, right? I grew up with his movies. I loved them. I probably, in some ways, I probably got into anthropology and archaeology. That's what my previous degrees are actually in. I was an archaeologist for my BA and my MA and for part of my PhD, or the part of the PhD that I did. I was an archaeologist, and I think it's probably fair to say that I was heavily influenced by his Indiana Jones character when I was 12 years old. I think that's fair to say. And so, yeah, I was heavily influenced by his movies as a kid, but even though his films are very popular, right? And so in being that popular, Harrison and his films are powerful agents of socialization. They have a strong effect on culture and society. But as we saw in the video essay yesterday, there are some problems with how his characters behave, right? And what did we see yesterday? What was wrong with his character's behavior?
Do you think he's watching him when you were little? Do you think it rubbed off on him?
Well, yes, but it absolutely did. It absolutely did, but in a more general sense. In terms of his relationships with women, I don't think I was ever kind of like confident or like alpha enough to kind of pull off some of the behavior that he exhibits there. So that, this is the thing, right, is that we absorb social messages, but we're all unique individuals, right? And we'll all kind of process those messages differently. We'll act on them differently. I don't think that anything that I absorbed in terms of what we saw was probably not beneficial, right? And I probably had to, good morning, I probably had to unlearn it, but but I've never acted in the way that we see those characters acting, because that's kind of that's not me. But that doesn't mean that other people won't learn and emulate just that, because men do behave in that way, right? Men do, sometimes continue to chase when they've already gotten a pretty solid no, right?
Not just because of movies, though, is it?
Well, no, I don't think so. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
I take no as an answer. If I don't understand it because you're different, it wouldn't make sense to me.
Right. So, well, yeah. So if you sort of maybe you ask a guy out, or you kind of try to get something going, and doesn't seem receptive to it, then you're kind of like, okay, I guess not. Guess he's not interested, and you move on, right? But I think Yeah, like it's very interesting because this is where again gender roles and social messaging comes in, because we've already said that there is kind of a double standard between men and women, right? We are seen as different and we're expected to behave differently in romance, right? You're supposed to be the one that men pursue, right? And men are supposed to be, I should use my quotes, supposed to be the one who does the pursuing, right? And so there's kind of expectations about how things are supposed to work, and I think to some degree we do follow those, and it doesn't mean that we follow them all the time, and it doesn't mean we have to, but there's kind of a way that things sort of are expected to go. Yeah, I do think that certainly the man as pursuer continues to be a common idea, right? Even though it doesn't always work that way in real life, and it doesn't even always work that way in movies. But would you say that that's still kind of the norm? Is for the guy to go after the girl, not the other way around? At least in film. Yeah. Real life is kind of a little bit different. But I still think in film it's the guy who is supposed to pursue. Um, you can contradict me here, but I also think sometimes there is that idea of not taking no for an answer is still there in films as well, right? You often see guys pretty consistently pursuing women in film, even if it's not, predatory romance. I think you still see that persistence. Would you agree with that? It's getting better, right? And sort of, if you watch, if you watch sort of newer movies, if you watch like To All the Boys I've Loved Before or something like that, you'll see kind of a better awareness of social messaging and sort of creating a more healthy or maybe more normal relationship dynamic, right? So some of these, that one, what's the other one? There was a really good one and I can't remember what it's called. So some of these newer movies are more aware of those stereotypes and dynamics, and so they work to kind of dismantle them, right? Or create something that's a little more equitable. But a lot of the sort of classic Hollywood movies still, I think, follow this predator prey kind of thing. Why? Well, I don't know. Why do we still adhere to that, would you say? What? It's what? I heard three things at once. Why do we still have? Well, why do we still have this kind of archetypal idea of the alpha male, the pursuer of women, and women being pursued, and men sort of having to wear women down, right? Having to continually work to woo this woman. Why do we still have that? Why does it sell the films? That's probably part of it, right? So Hollywood likes to give us what they've already given us, because if Fast and Furious 1 made hundreds of millions of dollars, then yeah, we should make a Fast and Furious 2, right? So they try to give you the same thing over and over again until you stop watching, because it's a good investment, right? If you like the first one, here's a sequel that's kind of the same, and then hopefully that'll make money as well. Usually the sequels are not as good, but that's the thinking anyway. So yeah, there's probably a commercial aspect to it. Why else do you think we still kind of adhere to these ideas? Okay, one word is not an explanation. You need to give more.
Like our stereotype forward and we there, and then we talk about movies.
Okay, so movies often reflect the sort of stereotypical ideas and cultural ideas that we have in society. That's true, right? We look to movies to see some sort of reflection of our real life, right? Even though it might be fantastic or bigger than life, but we try to find some reflection of that. What else?
So, when does this type of behavior originate?
Where does it originate?
When?
Um,
When? So,
Well, that's kind of a complicated question. And I don't know. I don't know the answer. We're also in kind of a weird situation here in that, you know, I'm just going to speak about the West here, but in the West we have love marriages, right? And so marriages are, you know, you fall in love with someone and you get married, and you know, there's this sort of dating that happens before and this whole thing. But in terms of like global culture and in terms of culture going into the past, that's really kind of weird, right? For the most part, marriages in most societies and civilizations has been arranged, right? So parents find a match for their son or daughter. They find a good family, because marriage is not just a union of two people, it's a union of two families, right? That's kind of more the historical normal, right? What we do now, at least in the West here, is kind of strange, right? That you just go off and marry whoever you want just because you fall in love with them. Like that's not, you know, in terms of what, if you look back at human history over the past couple thousand years, that's not really normal, right? That's weird. The normal thing is for marriages to be arranged between families, and so I don't really know where those ideas come from. They're not that old, some of them, right? Particularly in the West. So yeah, I don't know where that behavior comes from. Let's circle back to this for a second here. So what else is wrong with his behavior, his character's behavior? I'm sure he's a lovely man in real life. What else was wrong with his behavior?
What do you mean, what else?
What other thing? What things was his character? What things were his characters doing that were bad?
Yeah, consent was nothing to him.
Right. So there was definitely a lack of consent, right? And so his female characters were saying, no, I don't want this. Back off. I don't like you. You're a scoundrel. I'm not going anywhere with you, Dr. Jones. And yeah, and what do Harrison Ford's characters do?
Ignore.
Yeah, they ignore, right? They're not listening to these women. They're not listening to the fact that they're not giving consent, and they're saying very clearly, I am not interested, right? Back off, go away, I'm done with you. That's it, right? But he's not listening, right? Or his characters aren't listening. What else do they do? They're not listening to they're not getting consent, they're not listening to women's
He's aggressive.
yeah, they're aggressive, right? In all of those scenes we see both Indiana Jones and Han Solo and Rick Deckard and even James Bond, right? We see them use their physicality to trap women, right? Remember the Star Wars thing with Han Solo? Princess Leia is trapped in this little part of the ship, right? She's fixing some sort of, I don't know, whatever, right? She's fixing this thing, and he's basically got her cornered, right? She cannot move. That's super uncomfortable, right? Especially when, again, they're not romantically involved, right? They've been fighting for a movie and a half by the time that scene happens. So they're not boyfriend girlfriend, right? He's got her cornered. The same thing with Indiana Jones, right? He uses it's a pretty slick move, but uses his whip to grab her, right, and pull her back. In real life, you know, people don't have bullwhips with them, but you know, if he just grabbed her arm and pulled her back, yeah, not cool, right? He's using his physical body to trap her. We see Indiana Jones do that again with the blonde woman, right? He grabs her as well. Rick Deckard pounds the door shut, right, and pushes her against the wall. And even James Bond, right? He's like walking across the room and he eventually traps, I don't remember the character's name, Monica Bellucci there, whatever her character's name is. He traps her against the mirror, right? So in all of these in all of these seduction sequences, these men are using their body to physically trap women, right? And again, when you get the romantic music, da 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 da, right? The audience is supposed to see this as, oh, now they're in love, right? You're supposed to see it that way, but that's not the way it is, right? That's not really what's happening. The movie is just framing it that way. And again, we know that all of those characters are the good guy, right? We know they're the hero. And so we kind of see them through the lens of a hero. And we imagine that, oh, it's okay because, yes, Han Solo cornered Princess Leia and, didn't listen to her saying, no, no, get away, I don't like you, you scoundrel. I only like nice men, right? He doesn't listen to her, but of course, the movies framed him as the hero, and we kind of already know that Princess Leia's got the hots for Han Solo. We kind of know that already a little bit. But Han doesn't know that. She's never said it, and what she is saying is, no, 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 right? So yeah, his characters are not paying attention to, well, I'll just go here, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
why is the behavior? Why do the directors want that behavior in the movie?
It's true. Why are these characters written that way? Why are these characters written that way? Because what? Because the 90s? I don't know. I have no idea what you're talking about. Explain it to me.
It's 19 something, so this kind of behavior is more acceptable.
Okay, so it's yeah, these movies are from kind of a different time, right? But some of them are not, right? James Bond is basically current, right? I know that movie's 4 or 5 years old, but there's a new James Bond that's on the verge of coming out. If we can ever open theaters again, it will show, right? And so, yeah, why are these characters written that way? What's that? No, that's fine, but why are they written that way? Why are they written that way? Because that's cool, right? And yeah, because they reflect ideas of what manhood is or was supposed to be, right? He's the dominant guy. He's the powerful guy. He's, not intimidated by women. He, effectively seduces them, right? Well, that's. But that's the thing, right? That's what's interesting is that when those scenes were on the big screen, when people were watching those movies, they didn't see that, right? We're sitting here watching these scenes going, oh, tisk tisk, right? But when people watch those, people weren't thinking that, right? And they're not thinking it because, again, he's reflecting ideals of what masculinity was or is supposed to be, right? Men are supposed to be dominant. Men are supposed to be, if not aggressive, at least assertive, right? Men are supposed to be confident. Men are the ones who are supposed to do the chasing. There should be quotes around everything I'm saying here. Men are supposed to do the chasing, right? That's kind of how things are supposed to be. And so when we see a movie like this, it doesn't set off any alarm bells, or at least it didn't set off any alarm bells in people's head, because it reflected their ideals of what a man should be, right? At least on the big screen, not in real life. Yeah. But this is all bad stuff, right? And I think the message that it's sent to young men, or still does if people watch it, is that, again, no doesn't mean no, right? We talked about it a little bit yesterday, the idea of, why do we have this double standard between men and women, right? Men can have all kinds of sexual partners and it's fine, but if women have a bunch of sexual partners, they get called nasty names, right? Society punishes them for that, right, in various ways. And so the idea is that, women kind of, wanted it, right? They wanted to have sexual activity, but they were supposed to say no, right? They were supposed to be pure. And so men would just have to keep pushing and asking until they, until women finally said, oh, okay. But again, that's not a healthy dynamic, right? And it's not really the way things should or do work in real life, I don't think. And again, it sends a message that women don't know what they want, right? So we see Princess Leia and Han Solo, and we see Princess Leia, argue with Han Solo and yell at him, and every time he does something, she's like, oh, right? She's driven nuts by him, but then, she falls into his arms, and it's like, why was she so mad at him? Like, does she not know what she wants? Does she not? Is she not really competent in her own emotions or judgments of people, that she can be totally enraged by him in one moment and then suddenly she loves him, right? Women are intelligent, rational people, right? They know who they like and who they don't. And in real life, Princess Leia doesn't fall in love with Han Solo. She finds him annoying and frustrating, and she can't stand him, right? But again, the movie is allowed to frame it differently because it's fictional, right? It's a fantasy universe. And again, we see in all of those instances that physical or verbal intimidation is acceptable during seduction, right? And it's not. There's no grabbing, there's no pushing, there's no cornering, right? That's not cool, comfortable, or sexy in any way, right? And so, again, this is my little public service announcement that I'm sure you all are aware of, but yeah, consent, if you're going to engage in any sort of sexual or physical activity with people, they need to say yes, right? And even if they say yes at one point, they still get to say no later, right? They still get to say, you know what, I think I've changed my mind, I think I'm good, I'm gonna get my coat and go home, right? And they're allowed to do that, right? Yes means yes, no means no, and an earlier yes doesn't mean you can't say no a little bit later, right? So, but again, Harrison's characters don't really model this at all, right? Which is unfortunate. So Han Solo and Indiana Jones and Rick Deckard as kind of models of masculinity, right? As male role models. In some ways, they're not very good, right? In other ways, these characters are good role models, but in these ways, they're not, right? Because again, they don't care about what women say or feel, right? They don't care about women's safety. They don't care about women's feelings. They don't care about what women want. But again, they get away with it because of how his characters are framed. Just like on The Big Bang Theory, they frame these guys as, harmless nerds who couldn't possibly hurt anyone, so they get away with all their misogynist behavior. Here, he's framed as, a hero, right? A manly man, right? And so the things he does are okay too, because none of his characters are really supposed to be bad guys, but they still do bad things. Yeah, and so, yeah, this is important because these films are agents of socialization, right? They teach men what does it mean to be a man, right? Because we all need to learn that. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman in society? And these movies say, yeah, that this is what men are, right? And some of those ideas are damaging, right, to women and to men as well. Okay. So maybe I'll just say as well here that it is still okay to enjoy these movies. So I still enjoy Star Wars, I still enjoy Indiana Jones. Blade Runner I was never a huge fan of, but that's okay. It's okay to enjoy these things, even if they have sexist messages in them, but it's a good idea to be able to critique them. It's a good idea to be able to see what's happening, right? And understand the social messages that you're being given. And sometimes it might ruin a few movies for you, but I'm hoping that those aren't really that good anyway. If they're so easily ruined by this one thing, they're probably not that great.
So I have a question.
Sure.
The good guys do some sort. The good guys do sort of abnormal behavior, but when the bad guys perform that, why is it so visible in relationships?
Well, I think it has to do, why do good guys get away with this and bad guys don't? And I think sometimes it has to do with the fact that the hero embodies a lot of other characteristics that we see as desirable, right? So if you look at Harrison Ford's characters, both Indiana Jones and Han Solo, yeah, they have some problematic behavior towards women, right? And we've critiqued that just a few minutes ago. But both of those characters also have a lot of good things going for them, right? They are brave. They do actually care about people. So Han Solo is trying to, sleep with Princess Leia, but he actually does care about her. Like, he does love her. And, they do have a love story after that. So there's that kind of redeems him, right? Both of those characters are brave, right? And they're intelligent, and they're strong in the ways that they should be strong. They're persistent. They're pretty handsome. Harrison Ford's he's a reasonably good looking guy, right? No, not your thing. Fair enough. But they have a lot of things that society says are good, right? That society looks up to. And so they kind of get away with their bad behavior. But of course, villains don't, right? Villains are usually in the process of doing bad things in a bad way. They're enjoying hurting people, ha 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 ha, right? And sometimes they have facial disfigurements, or they're not very attractive, which we talked about with Adam Pearson in the disability documentary. And so, yeah, the movie kind of frames people as good guys or bad guys, and so that can really affect how their behavior is interpreted, right? And so Harrison Ford's characters can get away with things because he's framed as the good guy, but other characters will be framed as bad guys, and their behavior will be interpreted differently. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about music video. So music video is another place where we can see a lot of sexism, particularly in kind of modern pop music, okay? And so there are a lot of themes that talk about men and women and what men are and what women are, how sort of dating and relationships are supposed to go, how men should interact with women and women should interact with men. And kind of what's disturbing is, again, there is a lot of sexism, and well, I'll get to that in a second. But I want to hear your thoughts on this. So this is what I want to analyze here. I want to analyze this song and this video. Okay, so this is Ariana Grande's 7 Rings. Have you ever heard this song? Yeah, it was on the radio. Well, it's still on the radio. It's kind of a hit, maybe 2 years ago or so, something, when it was on the charts. And yeah, it was number 1, whatever. All her songs go to number 1. Right. So her song 7 Rings, very popular, had a music video attached to it. And so I want to look at the song itself, not the chords and the melody, but I want to look at the lyrics of the song, and then I want to look at the video for the song, okay, and see what we think. So first of all, social messages transmitted in the song. So here's part of the lyrics. There's more to it. And if you want to see the full lyrics, you can always look at it on your phone. This is about, I don't know, this is maybe a half the song. I think there might be another two verses to this, but just to keep things manageable, just that. So take a look at the lyrics and what kind of social messages, what kind of values or beliefs or ideas are kind of tied up in the lyrics. I'll just give you a minute or two to look and think, and then you can tell me what you think. Interesting. Very interesting. There's so much in that first verse. There's so much going on. We should probably look at the other verses too, but let me just see here. There we go. Let's. Okay. Okay. So, what is this song communicating? What ideas and beliefs and values is this song communicating? So much.
I want to hear what they have to say. Have you heard the song before?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like the idea of girls should spend money on being beautiful.
We definitely hear that. We definitely see that, right? So this money is, or this song is about spending money, and a lot of those things get spent on the hair, the diamonds, appearance, right? So we see that idea is there. What else? What else is there? What's she singing about?
That she's been through some terrible things. Says you've been through some bad shit as she feels like.
Okay, so she's been through some. I'm gonna clean up my language a little bit because I'm transmitting to the internet here. Yeah, she's been through some tough times, and she should be kind of sad and mopey about it, right? But instead, what is she?
She's done.
Yeah, so she's okay. So she seems to have come out of it unscathed, right? She seems to be strong and living her life, right? So okay, we hear that. So she's been through some tough times, but she's overcome those things. What else? What else is going on here?
I think she's talking about independence. And the only reason she's referencing the lashes and the diamonds is because those are expensive things.
Right.
But it's not because, oh, I use my money on like beauty stuff to make myself look pretty. You know? She said she bought a house just for the closet bookings and hers and when they got it. She bought a house. you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
She wants to say, I'm happy with that.
Right. So okay, hang on. It's good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah, one part is the financial independence thing, right? So she, if she provides for herself, right? If she wants something, she buys it. She doesn't need what or who. Yeah, she doesn't need a man to provide for her, right? She's very capable of buying her own things. She's very capable of writing her own songs, right? What's the line? Oh yeah, I write my own checks like I write what I sing, right? So she's in charge. She takes care of herself, right? She writes her songs. She gets paid. She buys what she wants, right? So there's that kind of independence, right? She doesn't need anyone to take care of her. She's an independent person. That's there. The sort of there's the focus on appearance, I think, right? So I think that's fair to say because the hair and the eyelashes, but there's also, I think, the focus on things that are expensive, right? So is the house in here or is it later in the song? Later in the song? Okay. So not only the fact that she's independent, but she's also she's doing well. She's successful, right? She can afford, the house, she can afford the diamonds, and, she want it, she got it, right? Doesn't matter. She doesn't look at her budget and see if she can afford it. She just wants it, she's got it, right? So there's kind of a financial independence there, a financial confidence. There is a little bit in appearance, which I think is true, but there's also...
But because who's her trying to tell women?
Yeah.
And she's trying to tell women, I'm independent, because like when she says my gloss is popping, I want my gloss to be popping.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and that's okay. Like I'm not, and again, the song can say and does say multiple things at the same time, right? So I do think there's the focus on appearance, but I think you're right as well, right? She's speaking to women, right? And what things do women want? What things do women spend their money on, or maybe want to spend their money on, right? So she's appealing to her female audience and saying, yeah, we all want to look great, and I look great too because I just want it. I bought it, right? I've got the cash. Let me just see here. Let's see. Where do we? Okay. Right. So here's a little more. Good. There's a little more to the lyrics here. Let's see. What other messages are here?
Where is the ring? Bring home the missus.
Right. So that's almost a pushback against the idea that women should get married or should want to get married, right? And she's saying, yeah, I got rings, but that's not what this ring is about. This isn't a marriage ring. This is, well, they're friendship rings is what they are. But yeah, so she's kind of pushing back against the idea that she should need to be married to be fulfilled or complete or whatever, right? It's kind of the opposite of what those romantic comedies were telling us, right? Those romantic comedies were saying, yeah, women, your life is really incomplete unless you have the guy, right? And here Ariana's saying, yeah, it's, I don't need a guy. I'm good, right? What else is happening here? Ooh, consumerism. Yeah, what makes you think that? Yeah, so retail therapy, right? The idea that if you don't feel good, if you're having a bad day, go buy something and that'll make you feel better, which sometimes it does for a little bit until you get the credit card bill and then you're like, ooh. But it's true, right? People do shop. People do buy things to feel better, and so she's clearly can afford it, right? So she's, yeah, I just buy whatever I want. If I feel bad, I go buy stuff. Consumerism, right? And again, the consumerism thing I think is also tied to the fact that a lot of the things she talks about are expensive luxuries, right? She's not talking about groceries and sensible shoes, right? She's talking about luxury items. What else is going on here?
Sure.
What's that?
Sure.
What?
Sure.
She's what?
Sure.
So she's showing off. Yeah, she kind of is, isn't she? Yeah, there's this is something that I don't have a slide on this, but it's something that an anthropologist or a sociologist would call conspicuous consumption, right? So the idea that you want to tell society that you have lots of money and status, and so you show the fact that you have lots of money. And rap guys are really good for this, because rap guys like to wear all the labels, all the most expensive clothes. Doesn't even matter if the clothes are like, the most important part of the clothes is that they're expensive, right? And the gold and the whole thing, right? They're showing off how much money they have. And so there's a bit of that going on here, right? Conspicuous consumption. She's showing that she has money by buying all these expensive things, right? So that's happening here too. What else is happening?
I don't mean to brag.
I don't mean to brag, but I'd be like, put it in the bag, y'all, right? So she's not bragging, but she kind of is, right?
It's like a subtle flex. It's not like an in-your-face kind of thing.
Okay, so I don't know how subtle it is, but
I'm being biased.
I know, and it's fine. It's okay. It's okay to be biased. She is, she's saying, I don't mean to brag. I think she's kind of bragging a little bit, but it depends on what you think the sort of central message of the song is, right? Is it a flex, right? Is it I have so much money, ha ha ha, or is it I'm independent and successful and I'm proud of that, or it depends how you interpret this song, right? And people are going to, that's the beauty of songs, right? Is that people interpret them and feel different ways about them, right? One song can mean everything to one person, and then to the next person they're like, yeah, okay, whatever, right? So that's the beauty of music. Um, oh, but I think there's more stuff here. Lots of receipts. What's a black card?
Credit card that has no limit.
Yeah, it's a credit card that has no limit. If you've got a black card, you've got money, or maybe none because you. But still, yeah, you've got money, right? So she doesn't need to brag. She goes from the store to the booth. So she's basically like, what's the booth? Yeah, in a recording studio, right? You put soundproof booth so you can record without, extra noise. So yeah, she goes and does her singing, and then she goes out and spends her money, right? That's kind of her world. She's got a jet. What's that? Yeah, it's not my thing, but then again, I'm not really her target audience either, which we'll talk about. I will say, before we go any further with this, I will say she's a phenomenal singer. Like, man, that voice is outstanding. She's really good. Yeah. Yeah, I don't doubt it. She's phenomenal singer. Phenomenal singer. Oh, what's that? Oh. So she's a great singer, and here we have one of her songs, which was very successful, probably made her lots of money so she can buy those red bottoms and whatever else she wants. What are red bottoms, by the way? Designer shoes. Yeah, what's the brand name? I always forget. Okay. There's one, though, that I think it's kind of like their trademark. But it's not like, yeah. They're like high heels, right? But the sole is red. I think it's maybe. Yeah. There is a brand of very expensive shoes, and it's kind of their trademark, the red bottom. So that's what she's talking about. Okay, so let's take a little break. We'll come back, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this and see if we can make this more complicated. Okay. Oops. All right, so we're back. Here we are looking at your average, or maybe above average pop song, because I think it was a number one, so this is above average pop song. But here we are, have the lyrics to Ariana Grande's, part of them, Ariana Grande's 7 Rings, and we said if we look at what this song is kind of about, we see a number of different things, right? So there is a strong kind of current of independence, right? So Ariana is financially independent. She makes her own money. She buys her own things. She doesn't really need a man to provide for her, to pay for her stuff. There's also kind of I think an element of that she's emotionally independent as well, right? And I think that's that she's got a ring, but it's not about marriage or whatever the line is, right? So she's financially independent, but she's also kind of like emotionally independent. She doesn't, she's not chasing around looking for a husband kind of thing. I think there's elements of kind of beauty and appearance, or the importance of beauty and appearance. And again, you could dispute that if you want. There's definitely elements of consumerism, right? The retail therapy. I want it, I got it. I go from the booth to the, what's the lyric? She goes from the booth to the store to the booth. Yeah, so there's kind of that idea of, the making of money and the spending of it, right? The song is not about I make my money and then I carefully prepare a budget and stick to it and live within my means. It's a boring song, right? So that's not the message. The message here is spend and spend on luxuries, right? So there's a bit of flexing going on here, right? To what degree you can make up your own mind, but that's kind of what the song is about. Did we miss anything? Did we miss anything? What are you thinking there, Nasser? I feel like you know this song best, but
I think, I don't know, I'm still on the board flexing, but I don't think it's flex.
you don't think it's a flex?
For a girl, like, I don't know, I'm not speaking for everybody,
Sure.
But I'm saying, like, to feel your best, you look your best. You know what I mean? She's not flexing in a way like, oh yeah, I got this and you don't, but like, I'm feeling myself. So it's how I look. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's kind of, I guess it depends on how you interpret it, right? Is she showing off, or is she expressing her pride in the fact that she's a successful artist, right? Really successful. And, and she's proud of that, and she should be. She absolutely should be proud of it, right? She's a very successful artist, incredible vocalist, not a bad songwriter either, although she did, lift the melody and the chords and the rhythm from My Favorite Things from The Sound of Music, but that's okay. People do that all the time. People borrow things, and as long as you cite it, which she has, then it's okay. But yeah, she's very successful and should be proud of herself, right? Undoubtedly. So yeah, that's probably a matter of personal opinion how you see it. The other thing that we might want to say about that is, the sort of conspicuous consumption, or the flexing or showing off, or however you want to call it, is, I think it's an important part of kind of the hip hop genre, right? This sort of, whether you call it bragging or flexing or expressing confidence, that's a big part of a lot of hip hop songs or rap songs, right? Is, I'm the baddest person around, yeah, and that kind of, there's a history to that, and that kind of comes out of like soul music from the 60s and James Brown and stuff like that. But there's a current of that moves through kind of soul and hip hop and rap that's kind of expressing confidence or bragging or however you want to call it. So she's probably borrowed a little bit of that too, because I'm sure she's obviously been influenced by hip hop and by soul and stuff like funk music from the 60s and 70s. So she's definitely been influenced by that as well. But that's a history of music thing. We don't need to go there. Okay, so that's the song lyrically. Let's look at the song in terms of visually. Okay, So I'm just going to very quickly, because I should have done this on the break, but I did not. I'm just going to pop the link to the video in Microsoft Teams, and I'm sure you could all search out this video in about 3 seconds, but just for your convenience, I'm going to add it. There we go. I've added it to Microsoft Teams so that you can see it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to watch the music video, and again, we're going to look for what social messages are being transmitted in the video. I'm going to ask you about whose gaze is represented. This is a bit of an academic term, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, whose eyes are we seeing this video through, right? Whose eyes are the camera? And then again, how do the messages in the video align or conflict with the audio? So how does the meaning of the lyrics support or not support what we see on the screen? Okay? All right. So online people, I'll turn you loose for about 4 minutes or however long this song is. Watch the video, think about this stuff, come back, and then we'll talk about it. Yeah, okay. All right. So, thank you, Ariana. My question to you, of course, is now what messages are we receiving from the video? What kind of values and beliefs do we see in the video representation of this song? What's that? There's what?
There's no man.
There's no, okay, there is no men in this video at all. Why not, or what does that mean? It's right. She's stated in the video that, or in the video, she stated in the lyrics that she's got a ring but doesn't need marriage, and she's implied that she doesn't need any men, and indeed, there are no men in sight. That is true. What else?
There was a bunch of happy girls, and it shows that men were happy.
Okay, so she's got all of her friends over. Everyone seems to be having a good time. There's no men around, and that seems to be okay, right? Apparently, you women can have a fun time without us guys. I didn't know that. Is that real life too?
Which is not,
No, that's just videos. In real life, clearly, no fun can be had without guys around. What else? What other messages are here? What else are we seeing? There's lots. Huh? I think there is. What are we seeing? What are we seeing that we saw in the lyrics? Okay, so we're definitely seeing the consumerism, right? Because there's like champagne, there's lots of diamonds and flashy jewelry. That's all there, right? What else do we see? I guess the independence from men, because there are no men, right? It's all just her girlfriends. The setting, or the setting's kind of a house party, right? With all her girlfriends, that's what's happening. Lots of pink, right? There's a lot of pink there, right? And what's the significance of pink? It's not Pink Shirt Day for her. Every day's Pink Shirt Day for her. I don't know. Why is there so much pink? Yeah, it's a girly color, right? It's a color that's associated with femininity, and particularly with younger women or younger girls. And I think it's probably safe to say that Ariana's trying to appeal to that group of.
Well, you take it out of context. The theme for the album is pink.
Oh, the whole album is very.
Yeah, but I guess she's appealing to girls and guys.
Yeah, I think it's. Well, it's probably both. I wasn't aware that the album was kind of pink themed, or that was an important part of the visual aesthetic of the album. But yeah, it's probably both, I would argue. But okay, that's worth saying though. What else? Or maybe, sorry. I was gonna say, maybe we could move on to the second question. So whose gaze is represented here? So who's doing the looking in this video? Yeah? Why do you say so?
Because I was gonna say she's zooming on her lip gloss, but I guess like she could be like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also like she's hanging out with the girls, and none of them seem to be like care about what they look like. You know what I mean? I haven't explained that.
That's okay. Let me give you a bit of background to suggest where I'm going with this question, and then you can see if you agree or disagree. So one of the things that's represented is in sort of art and media is the gaze, right? So many things we see through the eyes of the camera, right? And so whose eyes are they? And what I'm trying to get at here is the idea of the male gaze, okay? And you've probably seen this in movies quite a bit. Classic example, you see in the movies where, it's a restaurant or something, and then the girl walks in, right? And the camera starts at her feet, and it pans all the way up in slow motion, and then like she shakes her hair in this, you know, wind that seems to be coming from nowhere because they're inside. But again, you know, she shakes her hair. You know, have you seen that before? Yeah, that's the male gaze, right? Because that's the man's eyes looking all the way up, checking her out, right? That's what's happening there. So my question here is that what is happening in this video? Are we seeing the male gaze represented in this video? Not necessarily, you know, the toe to head scan, but
Overlook when she was singing and there were the girls like twerking and dancing, that wasn't the focus. If it was the male gaze, that would be the focus.
Okay. Right. So okay. The thing that kind of stands out to me is, like, you know, when she's constantly like on all fours, especially on the kitchen island. Yeah, that kind of that image kind of stands out to me, and I think this kind of image kind of stands out to me because that's kind of an odd thing to do at a house party with your girlfriends, right? Unless she lost a contact lens or something, I don't know, but that's kind of an odd thing to do. That's a very kind of sexual thing to do, in fact, and yet there she is on the kitchen island on all fours. And so maybe not the entire video, but I feel like there are at least certain parts of the video that are seen through the eyes of men and sort of appeal to what men might want to see. And this scene, I think, is at least part of that. I don't know how much else of the video you might attribute to the male gaze, but I feel like that part of the video is that, at the very least.
I feel like I could see where you're coming from, but I feel like you're only saying that because you are a man.
Yes, and that's the interesting thing, right? Is that the song itself and the video itself are not necessarily one pure thing or the other. And I think that Ariana, and certainly the people who work with her, are business savvy enough to know that they need to try to appeal to lots of people. And I think that's kind of what's happening, if not in the song itself, definitely in the video, right? Go with me on this and stop me if you think I'm insane. But I feel like there's a lot of pink there because it's meant to appeal to women, but it's specifically meant to appeal to younger women and even maybe younger girls, right? That's a lot of pink, right? Most adult women don't wear that much pink, unless you're like Elle Woods from Legally Blonde. But most women don't wear that much. That's a very kind of young girly thing to do.
But those are the lights.
What's that?
Those are just lights.
They are just lights.
Also, this particular light is known as like the bisexual light. This hue of purple and pink and blue.
Right.
So technically,
Right. So she may be trying to transmit that message as well. I don't know if she is or not. Maybe you might know better than I if that's something that is something she's meaning to put across. But I will say that, as in most media, and this video is no exception, nothing here is by accident, right? Everything that you see in this video, from the setting to the lighting to the fashion to the dance moves to the props to the camera angles, everything is happening for a reason, right? There's a decision has been made. And so, yeah, that light is that color not for no reason, right? It's not like, oh, here's the lights we have around, so let's just turn them on, right? That's not what's going on here. They chose those lights for a specific reason, right? And what the reason is might be up for debate, but it's not pink by accident, right? I would say that there's a lot of things that appeal to probably women in this video, right? Everyone is dressed very fashionably, right? Either in a more casual way, or Ariana's dressed in kind of a very ornate way, right? Very glittery dress and the little cat ears and the whole thing. And lots of makeup and nails and the whole thing. So she's very done up. Some of the other dancers are a little bit less so, but everybody is dressed in a fashionable way. I think we could agree, right? Okay. I also think there's something here for the men, right? Because I think crawling around on all fours on your kitchen island in a skimpy little dress, I don't think that's so much there for the women audience. I think that's there for her male audience. I would suggest. You might disagree with me on that fact, but I would argue that that's what that is there for. So there's a couple different ways to look at this, right? This video is a house party, or it's a party with a bunch of Ariana's female friends, but does it look like any house party that you've ever been to or might imagine you would ever go to? It doesn't. It's a bit of a fantasy, right? It's not super realistic, I don't think. I actually like to think that when Ariana has her like girlfriends over for a party, they all just like sit in their pajamas and eat and watch movies. I kind of feel like that's more like what happens, not this. So the video is kind of a fantasy, but whose fantasy is it? Is it a male fantasy or a female fantasy? Is it a fantasy of what women would like their house parties with their friends to be? Or is it a fantasy of what men might imagine with the kind of party that Ariana might have with her friends? Or is it neither of those? You think it's a female fantasy? Okay. So would you say then that the messages in this visual media are in alignment with the song or in conflict with it? Perfect alignment? There definitely is, right? There's a lot of alignment in terms of the independence, the lack of men, the consumerism, right? The champagne, right? There was that big tower of champagne glasses. Do you know how much those bottles of champagne are? Yeah, they're expensive. They're at least a couple $100 a bottle, if not more. And she's just like pouring it out everywhere, right? That's all expensive stuff. But I don't know. I see that, right? I see that this video is meant to align with the song, and it certainly does. But I also feel like there's an overt amount of sexiness here, right? With the way she's dressed, the way she's kind of crawling around on the island. And it's interesting to me because the song is kind of all about an independence from men, and there certainly isn't anything to do with sex in the song, right? Like there's no, it's not supposed to be a sexy song. There's nothing really about romance or sexual activity or anything like that. It's really, it's almost more of a female empowerment / consumerism song, I think. But the visual media shows us that, but I feel like in some parts it shows us that through the male gaze, right? It sexualizes Ariana and her friends in a way that I think is interesting given the fact that the song seems to be so independent of men, right? She doesn't need men. She's fine. She sings her songs. She makes her money. She doesn't need all of that stuff. But I feel like the video, at least in part, if not the whole thing, but at least in part, sort of caters to the desire of men, and specifically the sexual desire of men, not to see Ariana as an independent, successful woman, which of course she is, not to see her as that, but to see her as a sexual object, which I think is totally in conflict with what the lyrics are saying, right? The lyrics are saying is she's a totally independent woman, she doesn't need men, and yet I feel like the video, maybe not the whole way through, but in certain parts, is kind of presenting her as an object, right? As simply an object of sexual desire that has that's totally detached from the fact that she's an accomplished singer and writer and performer. But I don't know. Maybe I'm in.
Too much into it, and I feel like it's also very manly to focus on that one scene. But then I also see why it doesn't make sense for Ariana Grande to be on a countertop section.
Yeah. Well, and again, it's not so much, you know, I don't know that you could make an argument either way that it's, you know, because of my gender that I focus on that. But I focus on it because I think that, you know, and I'm not picking on Ariana here because I have nothing but respect for her music and who she is and her talent. But I feel that there is, this video is part of a sort of pattern in pop music where women need to sexualize themselves in order to be successful. Whereas it's not quite the same for men.
What if they're just having a good time and they dress the way they like, and fine, they look good? That doesn't mean they're sexualizing themselves.
Right. And that's the tricky part, right? And so how do we see this? Is this just a bunch of people who are dressed up, dancing to some good music, having a couple of drinks and having a good time? Is that what we're seeing? Or is there something different going on here? And again, it can be both at the same time, right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. And again, I agree with you that to some degree that is what we're seeing, right? This is a video about Ariana and her girlfriends having a party, probably dancing to some music, having a good time, no guys. That's exactly what's happening here. But again, are there other things happening here as well? And it can be both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And again, you don't have to agree with me, but I just invite you to think about it. And again, this isn't a criticism of Ariana. If anything, if it is a criticism, it's more a criticism of the music industry and maybe society as a whole, not so much of what Ariana does or doesn't do. But as I say, you don't have to agree with me, but I'm just inviting you to consider that point. That's all. The look on your face says, I don't want to consider what you're telling me, Mike, but I feel like you might have a point.
Yeah.
Is that and again, you know, it's not the important thing again is that, you know, when we look at social justice, we do want to focus on the upper level thing, right? What society is like, what messages are being transmitted through society, and how people react to those messages and are advantaged by how society works and are disadvantaged, right? So here, even if we accept the idea, and you don't have to, but even if we accept the idea that, yeah, Ariana is being turned into a sexual object here. Let's just say we believe that that's what's happening here. She's being turned into a sexual object. She's prancing around in a shirt that's like way too short for regular life. She's crawling around on an island. You know, she's being objectified and exploited by the music industry, right? Let's just say that that's what we believed. It's true, but in some ways it does benefit her, right? Because people are watching the video for that reason, right? She is gaining popularity. Her music is becoming more popular as a result, right? And, you know, she's a very attractive young woman. Like, we don't have to dance around that either, right? She's clearly, her looks are part of her entire persona and how she's perceived by the public, right? So she does benefit from that, undoubtedly, right? But again, I ask you to consider the societal perspective and how, you know, and what's going on here. And again, I'm not trying to criticize Ariana in any particular way. I'm just, you know, she's part of society just like we all are, right? And so, yeah, I'm just asking you to consider this idea that, you know, is the way she is being portrayed in this music video and her sexuality, is that empowering or exploitive, right? Is she being exploited in this way, or is she empowering herself this way? Or what's going on? And again, there's no criticism toward Ariana. I'm sure she's a wonderful person. She's a very successful, talented artist. But all I ask you to consider is what is actually going on. Producer of the video is a man, right? So that's not, you know, that's not the end of the story, but that's interesting to know. Probably the head of her record label is also a man, right? So again, no conclusions should be drawn from that, but it's interesting to note. Yeah, I'm just asking you to consider what's going on here in this song and in others, right? And her most recent video, which I definitely won't show in class. Doesn't she have a collaboration? It's her and is it Cardi B and?
No, it's Megan Thee Stallion and Doja.
Megan Thee Stallion and Doja Cat, yeah. So I won't show that one in class because that's far more sexualized than this one is. But yeah, and so, you know, take what we've talked about today and maybe think about it if you watch that video and.
That song's literally about sex.
Yes.
So hence why.
Right. But men don't sing about sex like that.
Men sing about sex.
They do.
Yeah, they do. They don't shut up about it. It's always about sex, drugs, and money. What do you mean? Come on.
You and I listen to different genres of music. But it's true, right? So men sing about sex as well. Again, I'm not trying to indict, you know, female artists or male artists or any genre of music, but just asking you to think about what we see, right? That's all. Okay, we are out of time. That was good. That was interesting. Come back tomorrow, and I actually forget what's next, but we'll talk about something else. Okay, so that is it. See you tomorrow. Have a nice afternoon.